Okay, welcome back to the channel everyone. I've come out again after work, so the sun's setting, so we're going to make the most of the light. I'm going to begin this segment just by going over some of the basics of the Voge AC525x. Now, let's start with the very basic. AC actually stands for Advanced Classic, which is the nomenclature Voge gave to their previous AC bike, the AC500 or 500 AC. Can't remember which way around it was. Which I think is quite nice actually, because it's showing the forefront of technology, but with keeping in that classic looks and charm. So let's go over some of the key stats. Got the 494cc parallel twin. Remember, this unit has an upped capacity of 23 cc's more than the previous Voge bikes in the UK, which were designated 500. This is a 525. Now, it's not a true 525, it's closer to 500, but they have upped the capacity of the motor. And you're looking at 46.9 horsepower, so just a smidge under the A2 legal limit, and 44.5 newton meters of torque at 700 RPM. Now, I can't find the old torque stats for the previous bikes, so I don't know whether it is up on torque given the extra capacity, but it certainly feels like it is. Okay, some other stats. The seat height is 845 millimeters, and when you're sat on the bike, it is fairly tall, not unworkably tall, but I'm 5'11", and I've got no bend in my knee, and I've actually, you can't see here, but I've had to switch to these big riding boots, because when I was wearing normal boots, like I came out just to do the teaser video, I was a bit tiptoey, so I've changed into big riding boots just to give a little bit more stability, which I think is a good idea. There's a 200mm ground clearance on this bike, which is important given it is a scrambler. That's a little bit up on the previous bike that I had, the 500 DSX. And another thing that has improved is the tank volume. So the tank volume on this is 19 litres. It was 17 on the bike I had. Now let me give you a little bit of an indication how far you can actually ride a 500cc twin. It is absolutely crazy. I could get 200 miles before the tank low fuel light came on. That used 12 litres. There was a remaining 5 litres of fuel. So I think if you ran the tank dry, and bear in mind I calculated the fuel over 10,000 miles, if you ran the tank dry, you'd be able to get, I think, 300 miles plus from one of these. Now this tank actually has an additional 2 litres capacity compared to the 500 DS and DSX models. So you potentially could go even further. You're looking at about, if you really ran this economically, 320, 340 miles per full tank. So consider that if you are touring on the bike. Okay, so now I'm just going to quickly talk about some of the improvements on the 525, brand new model. These are things which I've noticed as an owner of the original Voge motorcycle. Even that was only a couple of years old when it was brought to market, but comparing to this, you can see areas where they've improved the offering already. So one of the things is the TFT. The TFT display now looks thoroughly up to date and modern. I don't know what the dots per inch is on this display, but it looks really, really crisp and sharp. It actually looks like a better display than some of the Japanese manufacturers. On the older Voge bikes, it was TFT, but it was a little bit blocky and a little bit 800 by 640 or whatever the older resolution as standard used to be. Another thing which has been dramatically improved, and it's a control interface, that's the switch gear. Now the switch gear, again on the old bike, it wasn't bad, it was plastic. This is still plastic, but gosh, it's just very, very neat. Everything feels quality, there's nice colours and nice finishes. It's just very, very solid. It's also well laid out because you've got the starter or the engine kill switch and starter on this side integrated as one button. And then over here, you've got the rest of your controls and a few little bits and bobs for the, I'd say the menu system, which is built in within the TFT, because this bike does have quite a bit of technology. Okay, so a couple of other things to mention. The mirrors are much improved compared to the old DS models. Here they're a nicer shape. There's a lot more real estate on the mirror. You can see everything clearly out of it. There's quite a lot of flexibility in the ball and socket joint, so I found it really easy to see everything. They don't vibrate. It just makes the bike easy to ride, and it's very easy to pick up and get on with straight away. One other thing which I'll mention is the fixings. So on my bike, I had it for 10,000 miles, rode it in all weathers, and I noticed corrosion or rust on one of the Allen bolts, and some of the other bolts tarnished. It looks like they have improved these little Allen bolts, and they've actually got the 4270, whatever that alloy code is. So hopefully they're bolts that won't degrade because they're actually on display. They don't look like cheap bolts, they look like they've actually splashed out a little bit on the fixtures and fittings just so that the bike stays looking nice for longer. We've also had an improvement in the materials used. I do like the badging, I like this matte effect here. The plastic feels very high quality. There's no obvious weld marks, everything is very neat. Actually neater than my bike, to be honest, the BSA. Everything here just looks nicely constructed. Something which they've refined a little bit more as well is the actual engine appearance. So in the previous bikes, you had a matte engine casing with Voge, well, just like this one here, and then the same here. There was no detail on the engine, but they've actually machined off some of the powder coat, very high quality, in order to give you a little bit more detail on the engine, a little bit more Triumph feel to it. You can draws your eye, makes the bike feel a little bit more premium. We can see here, whilst we're talking about the engine, that this engine is the LX268MR, and that's the designation for the increase of capacity. And I think it's a completely square engine, 68 by 68 bore times stroke. Now previously it was the LX500, and again, as I said previously, we had a little bit less capacity in that lump. Right, so we've come around to the front aspect of the bike. This was the side that initially impressed Susie when I brought the bike home. Now the headlight is actually an upgraded design compared to the previous cafe racer, the AC500. So you can see it's got quite fancy optics, and if I flash the main, you see that lower segment there lights up, which is pretty cool, isn't it? Okay, so what we're going to assess in the review, we need to understand really the value proposition of this motorcycle, and whether or not if you purchase the bike you would be basically happy and not regret your purchase. Now let's take the Voge to task with a few key points. One of which is it's not really that much of an off-road motorcycle as in maybe some other scramblers are, because you've got a lack of crash protection on the motorcycle. The ground clearance isn't that high. You've got quite firm suspension, which is great on the road but not so good off-road. And you've also got the Metzeler Torrance, they're 80/20 tyres, mainly a road tyre. So if you take this tyre onto sort of mud and wet ground, it'll just get bogged down, as I actually have done on my bike. My bike had the same wheels, tyres, etc, etc. So it's not really a bike for a lot of off-road work. So then the question becomes, is it a bike that you would use on road, maybe the odd little bit of green laning, but then you're enjoying it for the way it looks, the commanding riding position, and all of that good stuff. Now the problem for Voge is it's actually got way more competition in the sort of £6,000 scrambler category. With the 300 Rally, yeah, they're a one-horse race, absolutely smashing it because no one else can compete with them. However, when you've got £6,000 and you've got this like a 500 to sort of 700cc twin scrambler, you've got the Moto Morini Sezzi Mezzo 6.5 scrambler, you've got the Fantech Caballero 500 scrambler, you've also got the other Chinese competition, CF Moto's 700 Heritage scrambler, and they've got a little bit more capacity than the Voge. A little bit more expensive, probably about £1,000 in it, but if you're looking at this bike, then you've got to compare to other bikes in the same ballpark. Now, where Voge might actually do really well is on the feel and fit and finish. So if you were to compare this bike up close and personal with those bikes, would Voge perhaps be a little bit more refined and a little bit nicer materials? That's something I'll probably talk about as we get further into the review. And finally, Voge also has competition from, well, itself. The Advanced Classic 500 or 500 AC, that's got an engine with exactly the same power output as this. Obviously it isn't a scrambler, but those bikes, or the outgoing model, can be had at huge discounts. So you're looking at 3,700 for some of them. So basically it's a lot of the same things. The tank, exhaust is different as well. The exhaust isn't as nice. You've got road-based wheels, 17-inch alloys. You've got nice LED lights, you've got a nice screen, etc, etc. So if you aren't really requiring the scrambler, then there is another Voge in the lineup that perhaps is more suited to your needs, and it's going to save you quite a bit of money as well.